Ever feel like you're leading a massive expedition? Not like a physical trip, but maybe a project at work, a family going through a tough time, or even just like yourself, through all of life's twists and turns. It's about keeping everyone on track, adapting to the unexpected, and making sure no one feels left behind. Today, we're diving into some ancient wisdom that tackles these exact challenges from the Book of Numbers, chapter 9.
It might seem like a surprising place to find leadership advice,
Yeah.
but this chapter really digs into those timeless dilemmas of how to guide a group while honoring individual needs.
Right. And it does it through two really fascinating stories. First, we have the Passover celebration, but with a twist. The text tells us that people who were unclean or far away couldn't celebrate on the exact prescribed date. So what do? They got a second chance. A make-up Passover a month later. That's pretty radical for ancient religious practices.
It is, and it highlights a concept that's often lost today: adaptable inclusivity. Back then, rituals were super strict. But here, there's this recognition that life happens. People have different circumstances. And you can still honor the tradition's core meaning without being rigidly exclusive.
Okay, so it's not just saying everyone's welcome. It's about actually creating a system that accommodates different needs
Yeah.
while still preserving the heart of the ritual. That's a nuance we often miss today.
Exactly. The second part of Numbers 9 gets even more visually striking. Imagine this. The Israelites are literally following a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night as their guidance from God. Talk about a dramatic GPS system.
Seriously. But beyond the cool visuals, what's the deeper meaning here? I mean, most of us don't have a literal cloud telling us where to go.
It's about trusting the journey, even when the path is unclear. The Israelites had to be both observant and responsive. When the cloud moved, they packed up and went. When it stayed put, they settled in. It wasn't about forcing their own timeline, but being attuned to a larger guidance, even when it was unpredictable.
So it's not passive waiting around. It's active engagement with whatever signs or guidance we're getting. Which, let's be real, can be tough in our world, where we're expected to have it all figured out and be constantly moving forward.
Absolutely. And there's a beautiful balance shown here, too. The Israelites moved when guided, but they also rested when the guidance said to. It's like a reminder that hustle culture isn't the only way. Sometimes the wisest move is to pause, regroup, and wait for clearer direction.
Okay, so we've got inclusivity with Passover and trusting this mysterious guidance with the cloud. But how do these ancient stories actually apply to our modern lives? Like, what's the takeaway for someone leading a team, a family, or even just themselves?
That's where things get really interesting. Let's start with the Passover example. Think about how many traditions we have today in families, workplaces, communities that might unintentionally exclude people. Maybe it's a holiday gathering that assumes everyone celebrates in the same way, or a work event that's inaccessible to someone with different needs.
Right, and often it's not about anyone being intentionally mean. It's just that we've always done things a certain way and haven't considered how to make them more inclusive. But this Passover story seems to be saying you can adapt without losing the essence of what you're celebrating.
Exactly. It's a call to re-examine those traditions and ask who might be excluded and how can we create space for them. Maybe it's offering alternative ways to participate, being mindful of dietary restrictions, or even just being open to hearing different perspectives on what the tradition means.
So it's not about watering down the tradition, but about making it richer and more meaningful by including more people. It's like saying, we value your presence and want you to be a part of this, even if your way of participating looks a little different.
Now, let's shift to that image of the cloud. Trusting the journey is easy to say, but what does it actually look like when you're leading a team, facing a career change, or navigating a personal challenge?
Yeah, it's one thing to trust when things are going well. But what about when you hit those inevitable detours and roadblocks? That's when doubt and fear can creep in.
Absolutely. And the Israelites certainly faced their share of those moments in the desert. But the cloud reminds us that sometimes the guidance is to wait, to be still, to not force a solution. We live in a culture that prizes constant action. But sometimes the wisest move is to pause, reflect, and gather more information before charging ahead.
That's a tough one to swallow, especially when we're feeling pressure to produce results. But I guess it's about trusting that even in those periods of stillness, there's a deeper process unfolding that we might not be able to see at the moment.
Precisely. It's about surrendering the illusion of control and embracing the fact that sometimes the path unfolds in unexpected ways. Think about it. The Israelites were escaping slavery, headed for freedom. You'd think it'd be a straight shot, but they spent 40 years wandering. That's going to build some resilience, right?
And probably some serious trust issues along the way. But I guess that's the point. Trusting the journey isn't about having blind faith that everything will be easy. It's about believing that even the difficult, confusing parts have something to teach us if we're open to learning.
Exactly. And that's where discernment comes in. The cloud wasn't just randomly drifting around, it was the specific form of guidance. So how do we in our modern lives distinguish between those fleeting impulses and the deeper nudges that are truly aligned with our path?
Okay, so we're not just talking about blindly following every whim. It's about cultivating that inner wisdom to know which clouds to follow and which ones are just distractions. How do we even begin to develop that kind of discernment?
It's a practice, just like anything else. It starts with self-awareness, paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. When you're considering a decision or direction, notice what arises within you. Does it feel expansive, energizing, aligned with your values, or does it feel constricting, fear-based, out of alignment?
So it's not just a mental process. It's about tuning into that gut feeling, that deeper knowing that goes beyond logic.
Yeah.
But what about when it's not clear-cut? What if you're getting mixed signals?
That's where the Israelites' experience offers another insight. They were a whole community following this cloud, right? Imagine the debates they must have had. Is it moving? Is it not? Should we pack up the tents? It wasn't always unanimous, but they had to find ways to interpret the guidance together.
So it's like even with our individual discernment, we can benefit from seeking out trusted perspectives, bouncing ideas off people we respect, and being open to the possibility that we might not have all the answers ourselves.
Exactly. It's about humility, knowing we don't have a monopoly on truth, and being open to learning from others. Just like those ancient travelers, we're all on this journey together, navigating by the best light we've got. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been unpacking how ancient wisdom from the Book of Numbers can guide us in modern life, especially when it comes to leading ourselves and others.
And we've talked about adapting traditions to be more inclusive, like that second chance Passover, and learning to trust the journey, even when the path is unclear, like the Israelites following the cloud. But what happens when we feel like we've completely lost sight of that cloud? What about those times when there's no clear guidance and we just feel lost?
That's such a relatable feeling. We live in a culture obsessed with having a plan, a destination, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. But what about those times when the plan falls apart, or we realize we're on the wrong path altogether?
Right, it can feel like a failure, especially when everyone around you seems to have it figured out. But maybe, just maybe, those periods of feeling lost are actually a necessary part of the journey.
I think so. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. Imagine the doubts, the arguments, the sheer boredom. But that wilderness experience shaped them, stripped away old habits, forced them to rely on each other and on something greater than themselves. It was a crucible where their resilience was forged.
So instead of seeing lost as a negative, maybe it's an invitation to go deeper, to reconnect with our values, and to honestly assess if we're even headed in the direction we truly desire.
Exactly. It's like that quote, not all who wander are lost. Sometimes wandering is the only way to discover what we're truly seeking.
But that doesn't make it easy. Any advice for someone in that wilderness right now, feeling disoriented and unsure of what to do next?
First, be kind to yourself. There's no shame in feeling lost. It's a universal human experience. Second, remember that you're not alone. Reach out to people you trust, friends, family, mentors, who can offer support and perspective. Sometimes just talking it out can bring clarity.
It's like those moments when the Israelites must huddle together, trying to make sense of the cloud's movements. Community makes the uncertainty a little less daunting.
And third, reconnect with those things that bring you joy. Even if they seem unrelated to your big plan, maybe it's a hobby you've neglected, spending time in nature, or simply taking a break from all the striving. Sometimes those seemingly unproductive moments are where inspiration strikes.
It's like giving ourselves permission to wander a bit, to explore different paths, to trust that even without a fixed destination, we'll still stumble upon something worthwhile.
Absolutely. And remember, the cloud wasn't just about giving directions, it was about timing too. The Israelites moved when it moved, rested when it rested. So if you're feeling lost, maybe the message isn't do more, but rather be patient. The way forward will reveal itself in time.
That's such a hard lesson for our go, go, go culture to absorb, but so essential. It's like that saying, sometimes you have to slow down to catch up with yourself.
Precisely. This ancient wisdom is all about balancing action with reflection. individual discernment with community support, and trusting that even in the wilderness, we're never truly lost if we stay connected to those things that give us meaning and purpose.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a final thought. What would you say?
If you're feeling lost, remember the Israelites wandering the desert. It wasn't always easy, but it led them to the promised land. Trust that your journey, even the messy, uncertain parts, is shaping you for something great. Be kind to yourself, seek support, reconnect with joy, and have faith that even without a map, you'll find your way.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration. May you always find your own cloud of guidance, even in the midst of the wilderness.